Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, one of the nicest and smartest people, Bernhard, joins us. He's Vice President of Economic Development for UNLV, here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers. Big R is Northern Nevada's #1 Golden Fire wood pellet supplier. More heat, less ash, 100% natural, and no additives. And there's only one place that stocks this many wood pellets, and that's Big R in Sparks, Winnemucca, Fallon, Fernley, and Lovelock. A river of wood pellets at Big R.
The casino industry drove Nevada's economy for decades. By the 1990s, however, the state's sole industry was in sharp decline. Many were losing their homes, many were leaving the state. Is Reno on track to be the Detroit of the West? Was an October 2010 Reno Gazette-Journal headline. Nevada knew it was time for a change and a time to diversify. Story County took that lead, took risks, invested tens of millions transforming its desert into a place of opportunity and a future for Nevada families needing something new. That desert now provides thousands of high-paying tech, advanced manufacturing, and energy careers at companies like Tesla, Panasonic, Google, Switch, and Redwood Materials. Story County transformed Northern Nevada forever, and the tide of opportunity has raised all vessels through construction contracts, high-paying careers, and the power of payroll. Tens of millions have been generated in sales and property tax, permits, and other revenues for Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, and for all of Nevada. Enough, in fact, to generate a surplus after public services are provided. And best of all, a sustainable economic climate has been created, enabling our children to stay in Nevada and live prosperous lives in their home state. Story County, improving Northern Nevada one industry at a time.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're delighted to welcome back to the program Bernhard. He is the Vice President of Economic Development at UNLV and my friend. Great to have you here, sir.
This is my favorite conversation. I love this. This will be so fun.
All right, well, let's start out with you and the kids going to the Women's World Cup.
We did do that.
In Australia and New Zealand. What was that like?
Yeah.
What was the kids' response to all of this?
Well, the kids were blown away because I have two girls, and they got to watch these female gladiators in front of 65,000 screaming fans. And of course, you can't help but think about Las Vegas and the way that it's becoming a sports capital for the universe. But there's something cool about women's sports in general, in that the energy and the vibe is just so positive. I've been to a bunch of men's World Cups, and fights totally might break out.
Right.
You're always sort of aware of there being an edge. And the Women's World Cup is just this huge party, and it just was so festive and so celebratory, and those two nations were so excited that they had this new era of women's sports and the new era of women in business in sports, right? The business of women's sport is growing so massively. But yeah, it was just a massive success on every sort of business level. The United States got knocked out pretty early, but we had fun just following all of the teams and watching the beautiful game grow.
Well, it's fascinating to see how long it's taken for soccer to really ramp up in this country, period.
Yeah.
You know, you and I both remember Pelé and the
That's
origins
right.
of
That's
all
right.
this.
Yeah.
And now it just seems to be coming into a much better place.
Yeah, and we have a decade ahead of us. We've got the 2026 World Cup coming up. It was recently suggested that that won't be in Los Angeles, and there maybe is a role for Las Vegas somewhere in there.
Really? Okay.
That could be a really interesting development. Stay tuned, right? The 2027 Women's World Cup is TBD, but could well be in the United States. In fact, we're competing very, very well for it. And in 2028, you have the Los Angeles Olympics, where the soccer tournament within that is actually massive, and especially on the women's side. So we've got a decade to come with soccer that will probably be unparalleled in the history of the United States. And of course, now we haven't even started talking about Leo Messi now being an American living in Miami and playing there, and the ways in which that has transformed Major League Soccer. So.
Well, and when you look at the Western United States and the Hispanic influence,
that's right,
and how huge soccer is all across Central and South America, not to mention Europe, that I just don't see any way for it not to explode in popularity.
There's no way for it to go another path. Yeah, in two demographic ways. The sort of Latinoization of the Southwest, right? The way in which the growing population, as you referenced, is one demographic phenomenon. But the U.S. women's national team are arguably the one women's sports team in the U.S. that are as popular as the men's version.
Right.
And so that obviously skews in very interesting ways for female observers, fans, spectators, and in ways, again, that's just a massive growth opportunity and business opportunity.
They need to up the salaries.
Yes, yeah. So we certainly are seeing as these revenues go up, and again, all the stadiums were sold out. I think the Aussies and the Kiwis were a little worried that, Panama, France might not have a big following because, of course, they're so far away. We went to Panama, France. It was absolutely packed and absolutely electric.
It's wonderful. Now, you've also been touring through Southeast Asia. You were in Singapore. What are your thoughts on what's happening with Singapore?
Turning into a travel show, but on behalf of UNLV, I was in Singapore. Singapore, of course, is an interesting Las Vegas city with whom we have wonderful relationships because UNLV has been there offering educational programming for many years. But we also have, of course, two Las Vegas companies in Resorts World and Las Vegas Sands who have mega resorts there. What's really interesting about Singapore these days is for a long time in Asia, there was this real rivalry between Hong Kong and Singapore over what was the best sort of jumping off point to go into all of Asia from an English-speaking city-state spot, right? I think right now, with all that's going on in Hong Kong, it's sort of like, the Singaporeans have thrown the right cross and as heavyweight boxers, and Hong Kong's on the canvas in a way, because what are you really investing in Hong Kong 10 years from now? If you buy a 10-year lease in one of those famous skyscrapers in Hong Kong, what are you buying 10 years from now, given the trajectory of what's happening in Beijing and with Hong Kong, right? That's a tough thing to predict. Singapore, meanwhile, is absolutely flourishing. And we got to watch with the Singapore Tourism Board the Formula One race, because of course we're bringing that here, and a lot of similar dynamics. That is very much seen as a tourism driver. That's a big motivation as to why they bring it to Singapore. But it also is an urban city race. It also is a night race, and so it also is just packed with entertainment. And so in many ways, it looks something like what we're going to see here in a month or so in Las Vegas.
All right, so let's go back to the Hong Kong thing for a moment, and China in general. So, so much in politics is about the public message, but then there's the private discussion. And we don't get to hear very much of the private discussion. But if you think about it, or at least as I think about it, the economics between China and the United States, for example, is huge. The economics between Taiwan and China is huge. And so, yes, China is going through all kinds of economic problems at this point in time, but every economy goes through ups and downs.
That's right.
And so if you're looking 10 years out, is it not a time to look at China and go, well, they have all these empty buildings, but they have a population that is just going bonkers in terms of growth. If you bought it today, what would it be worth in 10 years?
Yeah, what would it be worth? Yeah, and of course there are very positive stories to be told there as well. People in Las Vegas don't always understand that Hong Kong and Macau are basically one ecosystem. They're right next door to one another. And as California is to Las Vegas, Hong Kong as a customer base is to Macau. And in spending a week in Macau, this was the first time I had been there in the post-pandemic moment, and Macau's back. Right, which would have been a total shock, except that what we were saying a few months ago in Las Vegas was, oh my gosh, post-pandemic, Las Vegas is totally back. This is crazy. The resilience of the fun economy, the resilience of fun, the resilience of the human spirit wanting to seek fun is remarkable. But here was what was fascinating and different about Macau just a few weeks ago that I'd never seen before, and I've been going to Macau for more than 20 years. Macau had more strollers than I've ever seen before.
Really?
Right? Yeah, Macau has historically been, of course, a high roller spot, but very much a grown-up locale for visitors. Strollers, younger Instagrammers, because now there's a great spot in Macau, thank you Las Vegas, where you can take a selfie and Instagram it in front of the Eiffel Tower and Big Ben, which is just across the street, and what is it, the St. Mark's, the Basilica, the one in front of the Venetian right here.
St. Mark's Square.
Yeah, St. Mark's Square, right? All in one photo, right? Which is an amazing selfie and super Instagrammable. And there were a lot of younger folks for whom that was their experience. And that's not really been a traditional Macau experience either. Speaking of Beijing, Beijing has long wanted a Las Vegasization of Macau, by which they mean a much more diversified tourist experience. We don't want it to just be about the gambling. We want it to be about conventions and shows and entertainment and the kinds of things that Las Vegas does well. And I think we're seeing signs in the post-pandemic era that might in fact that's starting to be true.
And also they got rid of the junkets.
And they got rid of the junkets, yes.
So suddenly VIP was not as big a deal. Mass market was suddenly
and
a bigger deal.
it's a specific kind of mass market. They call it premium mass. So it's basically upper middle class, of which there's a huge and growing number of families in China for whom that's the case. That's the case for much of of Hong Kong. And so it was a natural shift, sort of demographically, to go after the much more numerous upper middle class as opposed to the much smaller in number, very, very wealthy. But it's also yielded kind of a different experience on the streets of Macau.
Yes, and the other thing that goes in tandem with this, both there and here, is that as I talk to operators in Nevada, they're telling me that, boy, we were thinking that this was all going to drop off after the first rage of excitement after we got done with COVID, but it keeps on going. And owners are now saying to their marketing people, you know what, we don't want you to compare with pre-COVID now. We want you to compare with last year. And so the numbers are being pushed higher, but they're delivering.
Yeah, they're delivering. Again, there's a real resilience right now. It might be a 2023 phenomenon of fun and of the desire to go and have fun. Maybe one of the results of the pandemic was that we all learned that this ain't promised to us, right? And so you know what? I value fun in a way that I didn't value it as much maybe pre-pandemic. So the consumer psychologists are going crazy with this. There's so many research questions. We always say this to our students at UNLV. What a rich time for research questions. If you can't come up with a research question in this moment studying Las Vegas or studying post-pandemic consumer behavior, shame on you, because there are just so many interesting things to explore.
All right, so in my personal life, I got to a point where I read a ton, obviously, every day, but I used to watch a lot more television news, listen to radio news, and I just got tired of the noise because that's all it has become. And so I turned back to music. And I listened to tons and tons more music, all kinds of music, from classical music to reggaeton. I mean, it's all over the place. But it goes to the idea of what you're talking about, which is I want fun in my life. I want beauty. I want love. I want enjoyment. And you get that from entertainment. And so I get where you're coming from with the idea of fun instead of yelling and screaming and noise.
Yeah, in a world of noise, we're all seeking that escape, right? And an increasing number of us can afford it. One of the interesting, I think, but slow burning phenomena that we haven't heard a lot of commentary on, in part because the story of the middle class in the United States can often be quite different. But on a planet-wide level, the growth of the global middle class is just this inexorable force. It's a remarkably dramatic thing in India. One of the things I tell our students starting today at UNLV is I would take as much, many classes, get as much information as I could about India, because there's no way the next 50 years India's irrelevant, right? Or even less relevant. The growth of the India middle class as a tech-consuming phenomenon, as a traveling phenomenon, as a fun economy phenomenon, It's just a remarkable story. It's a much bigger middle class than it ever was. And of course, India is about to surpass China as the largest in population nation in the world. But it's happening also in Nairobi, where the cell phone, the smartphone, has enabled and empowered an entire economy that has driven middle class numbers upwards in a way that UNICEF never has been able to figure out, or the United Nations, or the Gates Foundations. A lot of these entities that have worked so hard at trying to achieve the rise of a middle class in Africa, we're starting to see it in some cities in particular on the back of technology, which is a fascinating development. And what's the first thing you buy when you escape poverty and you're no longer in the world?
Cell phone.
Yeah, you buy phones and you buy fun, right? When you're done, when you're poor, you're buying diapers and toothpaste and the stuff that you need, right? And then God bless you when you are finally able to sort of escape the grasp of that moment. The first thing you tend to buy is fun, and Las Vegas is a place that's really good at that.
Yes, indeed. I want to go back to India for a second,
Yeah.
because about 15 years ago, Rossi Wallenkata, former head of the Convention Authority, was on the program, and he talked about India as being one of the markets that Las Vegas should go after, and that was on their radar. It has since not been on their radar, but that is a vast population that you should be going after at some point.
You look at the tech tycoons there, right? And man, that's a great market. And by the way, you know who is taking advantage of that is Singapore. Singapore is a place that's extremely diverse, especially by Asia standards. But there's a very large Indian community there, which leads to a lot of inbound tourism, and that is where India is playing.
Yes. One thing I also wanted to point out is, because I want to get away from the noise that's coming out of this country, one of the places I've been watching and listening to is CGTV, which is China Global Television. Now, it's, of course, a propaganda, quote, news station, but it's very easy to pick out which parts are the propaganda and which parts are actual news, but they cover Africa. And so you see things from Nairobi, you see things from Kenya, you see things from Mali, you see things from the Sudan. You know, we in America are not exposed to these things.
Yeah, and gosh, what a shame, especially for, say, an 18 to 22-year-old, right, who I hang out with every day down the road here at the UNLV campus, because they're inheriting a world where literacy, not in the traditional sense, but in the global literacy, just knowing where places are and how they engage and how they interact. I think about, as you know, I go 5 generations back in this city, and my great-great-grandfather, when he arrived here in Las Vegas to be a dealer, he didn't have to find China on a map or know about the nuances of the inbound Chinese traveler or what the favorite games or foods were. You can't get away with that at the dealer level, and you really can't get away with that at the C-suite level.
Let's take a break. We'll come back much more with Bo Bernhard after this timeout.
It's the $200,000 Cars and Cash giveaways at Carson Valley Inn. Cash and prize drawings Thursdays and Saturdays. Plus, win a 2023 Ford F-150 or we'll pay you cash instead. Don't miss your chance to play and win. Cars and Cash at the Carson Valley Inn.
For 50 years, Nevada Heating has been keeping people comfortable in their homes. At Nevada Heating, call the do-it-right guys and get the air conditioning back on today. That's the Nevada Heating way. Why sweat for days on end when Nevada Heating can get your air conditioning fixed today? Call us today and we'll fix it today at 323-5585 or schedule us on our website at nevadaheating.com.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bo Bernhard. He is the Vice President of Economic Development at UNLV. Okay, so I've spent the last week and a half here in Las Vegas in one way or another. It is packed. It is packed constantly. And yet we have 2 stadiums coming. We have the Bright Line train coming with a 100-acre development going along with that. The question is, how are we going to be able to service all of these people in a manner, especially as we're seeing with Formula One, where we're building all this infrastructure that's going to be taken down and put up again and taken down. Steve Hill from the Conventionalist Authority is saying, they're getting this all worked out because this is the first year, second year is going on will be better. But what are your thoughts about capacity?
How much is too much, right? And when do you run up against that threshold? Now, I think that Las Vegas has been up against this question for a long time now, right? And so certainly at I think about the massive expansion that started with the Mirage, right? And then the race to build a cooler, bigger, shinier building that just led to massive influx of new buildings, new developers, and we faced those questions then. I think it sounds like you also had a really interesting conversation on airports and the ways in which that infrastructure plays a role. But it becomes an infrastructural challenge. John Restrepo, the economist locally, likes to talk about how we really only have 8 years of developable land left, right, at least within the valley itself. These are the questions for the leaders of Las Vegas. It really is a managing growth challenge for them. So I don't know if we've reached that threshold, right? I don't know if there is a threshold. I do know that, again, the ability of Las Vegas to drive tourism, inbound tourism, and inbound spend on the part of tourists is really just unlike any other place on the planet. And in a postmodern economy where it's not so much about making stuff as it is about making experience, that ain't a bad place to be. We don't think about Las Vegas like we think about a Detroit, right? Like a solid place that makes stuff, and that's just this super solid foundation. Las Vegas, I think, in the popular imagination is much less stable, much more uncertain. When, again, what we've seen in the resilience of the fun economy, the resilience of the traveler, the resilience of the fun seeker, should give us a lot more confidence that, again, this is only going to continue to grow. Okay, so do we go vertical instead of horizontal? We've been wondering that for a while, right? And so far we've been more Phoenix-like than we've been Manhattan-like in Las Vegas. But at some point, and certainly if we, as Restrepo suggests, are going to run out of land in the near future, you got to go vertical, right? And then, of course, the question is, do we spill out between the mountains along the 15 on the way up to Utah and Apex, and do we do the same thing on the way to LA with Sloan and on the way to Ivanpah and the airport, right? That's clearly what we've seen. I was in Phoenix last weekend, and Phoenix just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, right? And the urban sociologists have often pointed to Phoenix as an example of what not to do, at least as it pertains to suburban sprawl. Right. And the fact that you've got to drive so far to get from one neighborhood to another quite often as a regular experience of Phoenix life. Right? Those are the kinds of things that face us as we spill out outside of our walls, if you will, because we're completely surrounded by a mountain range. Well, and in addition to that, you've got all the turmoil in the Congress, so allowing us to get more BLM land, and not just here, but all across the state, is a real challenge. Tough lift. Let's take another quick break and we'll be right back. Sounds good.
Safety is the #1 priority for the trucking industry. Over $7 billion a year is spent on technology like this electronic eye that will apply the brakes automatically. But the most important factor for safety is the truck driver. These hardworking men and women who safely move over 70% of our nation's freight and 94% of Nevada's. We thank you because trucks move America forward.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bo Bernhard. He is the Vice President of Economic Development for UNLV. At Blackfire, you have been so into esports. When is esports going to explode in Las Vegas and Nevada in general? Because around the world it's huge, and yet it's not here.
Yeah, the question is not how do you make esports popular, it's how do you cram it in real estate that frankly is really valuable on the floor of a casino resort. As big as these buildings are, the battle for real estate within is really, really vicious, right? We see very well-established famous chefs and so forth go out of business or at least be moved along so that somebody else can come in and try. And what we haven't figured out is how do you create a Vegas-sized version of esports. The Nevada Gaming Control Board's answer, or at least partial suggestion, is we regulate it, we allow you to bet on it, but that's not yet proven to be terribly popular. So again, I would say that the esports group that advises the Gaming Control Board is coming up with, of course, regulations and guidance there. And there's no way that the future of Las Vegas doesn't converge more with video games, because it is absolutely the pastime of the young.
To say the least. Bo Bernhard, always love having you on the program, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
7 at 7 is a newscast built for your smartphone. It's a 7-minute newscast available every weekday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. at lvrj.com. We don't waste your time, and we give you the day's top stories.
We at the RJ have noticed some similarities between us and a certain BTS character, RJ.
Plus the latest in Las Vegas business, weather, health, and entertainment news. 7 at 7 streaming now on your smartphone.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Event Center sits at the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. 2 floors of meeting and event space are ideal for groups and conventions. Stay in one of 200 luxurious rooms and suites. Brand your event throughout the property. Flexible event spaces make for easy planning and personalization. Take over the entire hotel with a full buyout option.
'Tis the season for the Holiday Cash Express at Tamarack Casino. We're trimming the tree with weekly cash giveaways, including a $5,000 winner every Saturday, plus $70,000 in grand prize stocking stuffers, including 2 $15,000 Holiday Cash winners guaranteed. It's a good time to win at Tamarack Casino.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, and thanks to everyone at the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas for their help, including Don, Shane, Crystal, and George. We'll see you.